live from the Ice House
Oh, I will.
in Sacramento, California, home of the folk singing sensation Lon Milo DuQuette and his partner
Don't make anything up.
Constance.
I'm. Good morning. I'm in another costume this morning. I'm changing the furnace filter. If,
Here we got
Ron, what are you doing?
there you
I
go.
was trying to.
Oh,
I
okay.
was adjusting myself, but you keep moving the screen. It's
Partners.
hard.
Okay,
Woo.
there you go.
Anyway, you don't really. I'm changing. I'm changing the furnace filter and cleaning the grate that I don't want. I don't need to be seen anymore. Anyway, and doing laundry and making muffins. And Lon's afraid of tools, so I can terrorize him with a with a dust broom.
I'm about to sneeze. Okay.
Get that out of here.
Oh.
Have a good day. Do something. Change your furnace filter.
Oh, I wanted to get a shot of her up on the ladder doing it.
Well, yeah, but on the top step because they have them in weird places here. Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway.
Go figure. They just wanted to keep the ice house cool. Okay. This morning, Constance and I were watching Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman, which we do every morning. And if you're in an area that usually a PBS station in your area carries Democracy Now! If not, you can see it every morning just on your computer. Just go to their website and watch it every morning. It's an hour of news that keeps you informed a little better sometimes, and
Then you want to be.
than corporate media. Anyway, it's we were watching that, and they played clips of the congressional hearings for people who have been nominated for cabinet positions. And the woman who is being interviewed, I guess, by the committee, who's she was questioned about if she agreed or something about the biblical okay, justification for the ownership of certain property in the Middle East. And she said she did indeed believe that, in so many words, that she believed and upheld in the policy that the biblical rights to the property was sort of the last word in it. Okay, and I went to a great deal of work quite a few years ago in preparation for this book here, The Key to Solomon's Key. Is this a lost symbol of Masonry? And in it, I had to at least be comfortable with my understanding of the historical foundation of the especially Old Testament. Who wrote it? When was it written? And when does empirical history coincide and start to sync up with Bible history? And I've shared the story in one aspect or another over the years, and talking about the first temple, the second temple, so-called second temple, which is probably the first temple. And but anyway, I'm going to just pick up this part right here. Again, the book is the key to Solomon's Key. At this point in time, approximately 539 BC. Now, that sounds like a long time ago, okay? But relatively speaking, historically, it was pretty much yesterday. 539 BC, especially when we think that Moses and many of the Bible stories supposedly took place. Let's see if I can find the charts. Maybe I can't find it right away. Supposedly took place 10, 11, 12, 13, 1400 BC. Okay. But it's only at 539 BC when the historical and critical scholarly evidence confirms this story. Cyrus the Great of Persia conquered Babylon and began to deport and resettle the descendants of Nebuchadnezzar's foreign captives. And it's then that empirical history starts to hint of the presence of a Jewish people whose center of worship is a temple in Jerusalem. Prior to that, however, there's silence concerning the children of Israel. Our only evidence of Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Jacob, Israel, Esau, Joseph, and the entire Egyptian captivity, Moses and the Exodus and wandering, Joshua and the conquest of Palestine, and the kingdoms of Saul, David, and Solomon. The only evidence of the existence of all those things is the Bible. And because of everything I covered to set that up, I say, and in this case, the Bible is demonstrably unreliable history. And yeah, I won't go into all of that, but please, you're free to peruse this. Now, I in writing this, I contacted Thomas L. Thompson, the professor of Old Testament at the University of Copenhagen, who was at the time a preeminent scholar on the subject. And I wrote him back and I said, now am I safe to assuming there's no empirical history for, well, in this case, King Solomon? Prior to the 5th century or 6th century BC. And he says, oh, yes, you're quite safe in doing that. You could probably push it back, another 1,000 years, okay? But here's what he said, I quote him here. In writing about the historical development of Palestine between 1250 and 586 BC, all of the traditional answers given for the origins and development of Israel have had to be discarded. The patriarchs of Genesis were not historical. The assertion that Israel was already a people before entering Palestine, whether in these stories or in those of Joshua, has no historical foundation. No massive military campaign of invading nomadic Israelites ever conquered Palestine. There never was an ethnically distinct Canaanite population whom Israelites displaced. No empire there was no period of the judges in history. No empire ever ruled a united monarchy from Jerusalem. No ethnically coherent Israelite nation ever existed at all. In history, neither Jerusalem nor Judah ever shared an identity with Israel before the rule of the Hasmoneans in the Hellenistic period. And the Hellenistic period was approximately 280. Excuse me, 200 BC. Okay. The Hasmoneans, Thomas referred to above, Lon already said it, were a priest family called the Maccabees, who led a successful and historically verifiable rebellion against the Seleucid kings of Syria in the 2nd century BC, and established an autonomous Jewish kingdom that existed from 67 BC, when the area was annexed by the Romans. So in other words, the historical foundation for the story of the Exodus from Egypt may not have been history, but Hanukkah was. Okay, the miracle of Hanukkah, probably, that was right when you could actually kind of prove something happened, or at least that was the time period. The next obvious question becomes, who wrote the books of the Bible where these stories originate? And the answer is simple. We simply don't know. It's clear that multiple scribes and authors were involved. Many traditionalists believe prophet Jeremiah, or at least part of these, wrote at least part of these texts. But Jewish traditions, St. Jerome and many modern Bible scholars think Ezra, the scribe or person writing as Ezra or Ezra Nehemiah, edited and formatted much of the Pentateuch and several other Old Testament books, including Joshua, Judges, and the books of Samuel, Kings, and Chronicles. And that was written no earlier than the 6th century BC. Many scholars agree generally upon the 6th century date, but also suggest that the same author or authors actually penned the Pentateuch, and at the very least had a hand in compiling and editing the books of Chronicles, Kings, and several of the books of the Old Testament. There are literally hundreds of complex and convoluted theories of exactly who put pen to paper to create the books of the Old Testament. But most seem to dovetail, in a greater or lesser degree, to the person or persons known in the Bible as the scribe Ezra. Furthermore, there is almost universal agreement that the works cannot be traced any further back in time than the 6th century BC. Prior to this, the historical and archaeological fingerprint of a Hebrew people united by a single religion, occupying a nation with its headquarters in Jerusalem, is non-existent. Indeed, according to Norman F. Cantor, Emeritus Professor of History, Sociology, and Comparative Literature at New York University, Rhodes Scholar, Porter Ogden Jacobs Fellow at the Princeton University, and Fulbright Professor at Tel Aviv University, says this: the first millennium of Jewish history as presented in the Bible has no empirical foundation whatsoever. That's quite a statement. And I venture to say that most men and women of faith around the world, including that future cabinet member, would not believe it even if they were presented with uncontroversial proof. It would be a psychological blow of biblical proportions. Forgive me for this. To anyone whose religious convictions are based upon the historicity of the Bible, it would be an even bigger blow to the self-image and geopolitical interests of contending political forces embroiled in today's Middle Eastern conflicts. Combatants who appear to be treating the pages of the Old Testament as if they were land grants, whose deeds of ownership were signed by God Himself. Nevertheless, the unthinkable appears to be true. The kingdoms of David and Solomon were fable, not history. The idea of 12 distinct tribes of the children of Israel, with a past reaching back to the 13th century BC, was likely an ingenious concept fabricated in the 6th century BCE or later to provide a single cultural and religious identity to the descendants of a diverse assortment of people with no cultural memory whatsoever. People whose ancestors came from a dozen or more regions conquered by Nebuchadnezzar. People whose real ancestors were thrown together by the fortune of world events and who eventually had to be relocated when Babylon fell to the Persians. Because Palestine was an area undefended by a universal or a unified political or military presence, it was an ideal homeland for such a mass relocation. If considered in this light, both the Bible and Masonic tradition point the rational investigator to at least consider this scenario. If all of this seems like something that could never happen, I need only point to events of a little over 100 years ago, when the American prophet, Joseph Smith, his successor Brigham Young, and the exodus of the Latter-day Saints to Utah. Again, this is Constance's favorite book, actually. I hear her puttering around in there. Yeah, this is Constance's favorite book, and if for no other recommendation, then this is her favorite book. Please consider getting it. It is by my good friends at CCC Publishing. It's available on Amazon and directly from CCC. And it's more timely than ever. Until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will.